The next sutta, 22.8, agitation through clinging, is very similar to the previous sutta, 22.7, which is also agitation through clinging. At Savatti, bhikkhus, I will teach you agitation through clinging and non-agitation through non-clinging. Listen to that and attend closely. And how, bhikkhus, is there agitation through clinging? Here, bhikkhus, the uninstructed worldling regards form thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. That form of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of form, there arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. When we identify with this form, for example, this body, as I, me, myself, there is clinging. Because there is clinging, a little alteration in this form leads to preoccupation in the mind. You are constantly thinking about it. Because you are constantly thinking about it, you become obsessed about it. This obsession leads to agitation within, and you are not at peace. Therefore, there is sorrow, there is lamentation, there is pain, there is displeasure and despair, just because of alteration in this body. He regards feeling thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. That feeling of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of feeling, there arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. When there is change in the feeling, obviously, because of your clinging to that feeling, there is constant obsession in the mind about that alteration in feeling. You are not ready to accept the law of nature that even feeling changes, because everything changes. Everything is like a moving train. When you become clear that it is anicca, you will not experience sorrow. But till the time you are not clear that it is anicca or impermanent, you will keep holding on to that feeling. You keep wanting it to not change. And the wanting it to not change leads to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair, because the feeling is bound to change. He regards perception thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. That perception of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of perception, there arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. We keep holding on to our perception of people, situations, and things. We hold on to our own perception about our own selves. And soon, with the change in scenery, perception changes. This is the law of nature. But the ego is not ready to accept this change. It wants to hold on to that old perception, that old perception of me, that old perception of other people, and the old perception of situations and things. Because you hold on to the old perceptions, there is clinging, and this clinging only leads to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Why? Because it is also bound to change. He regards volitional formations thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. That volitional formations of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of volitional formations, there arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. We keep thinking these labels that I have put on myself. I am a very logical person, or I am very organized. And one day you're not organized so well, and you experience a little turbulence at work or at home because of that non organization. What happens to you? You had assumed a label of that volitional formations as I. But volitional formations are bound to change. It is the law of nature. It is anicca. Because there was non-acceptance of the law of nature, I held on. I was clinging to a volitional formation. And because of my own clinging, there is pain, sorrow, lamentation, displeasure, and despair, because that volitional formation definitely changes with time. He regards consciousness thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. That consciousness of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of consciousness, there arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Ear consciousness, eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness are also a part of this law of nature. They are also bound to change. The consciousness changes and alters. Your eye consciousness can come into contact with an object and see it. And in another situation, you could miss the keys sitting on the table right in front of you. The eye consciousness keeps changing. Unnecessary preoccupation in the mind with the change in the consciousness leads to agitation and leads to a not so happy state of mind. And because of that, there is sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. This is only because you had identified with that consciousness as I, or mine, or myself. Drop this identification. See that everything is changing, everything is passing. It is just a moving train. And then nothing will agitate you. It is in such a way, bhikkhus, that there is agitation through clinging. And how, bhikkhus, is there non-agitation through non-clinging? Here, bhikkhus, the instructed noble disciple does not regard form thus: this is mine, this I am, this is myself. That form of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of form, there do not arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Take this up as homework. Whenever there is some change or alteration in the form, just remind yourself, this is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. Yeah? Or be very clear right now, never to fall into this identification with anything. Yeah? Not even form, that it is mine, or this I am, or it is myself. The day you wake up to this and drop that false identification, then there will not be any sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, or despair. He does not regard feeling thus, this is mine, this I am, this is myself. That feeling of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of feeling, there do not arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. When you have seen the truth, that feelings come and they go. They are impermanent. I had falsely identified myself with this feeling, the feeling of love or the feeling of hatred, the feeling of jealousy or the feeling of compassion. Everything comes and goes. I am not that. It is not mine. This is not myself. If you are constantly in this understanding, established in this understanding, then there is no pain, lamentation, sorrow, displeasure, and despair. He does not regard perception thus. This is mine, this I am, this is myself. That perception of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of perception, there do not arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Whenever the perception changes, perception of how he is or she is, or how I am, he is very clear that it is all impermanent, that it is not I, that it is not mine, that it is not myself. So obviously the change does not cause displeasure or sorrow or pain or lamentation or despair in him anymore. He does not regard volitional formations thus. This is mine, this I am, this is myself. That volitional formation of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of form, there do not arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Today, you are an active person. Tomorrow, you will be not so active. It does not matter. You cannot expect to hold on to that label of active person, which is nothing but an impression in the consciousness of how you are, a volitional formation, yeah? Something that has formed out of your own will. Will keeps changing. That is why the volitional formation changes. And that which changes is like a moving train. It is really silly of me to try to hold on to a moving train because I am going to be injured. So if I was active yesterday and I'm not active today, it's okay. If this body was young yesterday and it is old today, it's okay. Change is the only permanence. And one who respects this nature's law, nature respects him. And he does not experience sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair when the volitional formations change or alter. He does not regard consciousness thus. This is mine. This I am. This is myself. That consciousness of his changes and alters with the change and alteration of consciousness. There do not arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Consciousness is bound to change. Sometimes you will cognize something and sometimes you will not cognize something, and that is fine. Change is the only permanent thing. If you recognize and understand this law, you will always be able to find that happy place and stay established in that happy place. If you do not respect this law of nature, that everything changes, then there will be pain, lamentation, sorrow, displeasure, and despair whenever there's a change in a little bit of your cognition, either through the eye, through the ear, through the nose, tongue, mind, or body. Again, I repeat, do not believe me, do not believe the Buddha. You yourself experiment. You check it out for yourself. When you respect nature's law about non-identification with a particular thing, for example, this body, and when it changes, you check, I have not identified with this body. Am I experiencing any agitation? You will come to your truth that non-identification with the body leads to no agitation, and identification with the body leads to agitation. You can, of course, experiment with other things. This was just an example. It is in such a way, bhikkhus, that there is non-agitation through non-clinging. That was a beautiful sutta. Let's apply it and let's keep walking on the Buddha's path. May you be at peace.